Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This isn't just some abstract idea. It's a vital truth you may have lived without ever naming it. The unconscious is not just a vague, shadowy corner of the mind. It is the home of unhealed wounds, forgotten memories, and emotional reactions we can't quite explain. It's the nameless sadness when someone ignores you, the sudden anger when you're rejected, the gnawing feeling of not being enough even when you're loved. Maybe you've asked yourself questions that seem irrational but won't leave you alone. Why do I feel hurt just because a text went unanswered? Why do I get anxious when my partner goes quiet? Or why do I sabotage good relationships, even though deep down I just long to be loved and understood? These aren't signs of weakness. On the contrary, they're signs you are listening to the voice of the inner child still living in a room full of unlit memories. What Jung called the shadow is this unconscious part of us, where the emotions, memories, and traits we've denied or rejected are stored. Until we recognize and integrate it, the shadow will drive our behavior without us even knowing, avoiding intimacy, fearing abandonment, or repeating painful patterns in love and family. What looks like irrational behavior is really the language of unacknowledged wounds. When you start asking questions, when you begin to wonder, why am I like this? That's the beginning of the journey into the unconscious. Jung called it the first step of individuation, the process of becoming your whole self. And that journey isn't a one-day healing event, but a courageous path to look back, to feel deeply, and to learn how to love even the darkest parts of yourself. Have you ever wondered, is there something in me that I've been avoiding? Which of my strong reactions is actually the voice of a wound that hasn't been heard yet? Share it in the comments, because your story might be the light that helps someone else find their way out of their own darkness. Have you ever felt like your life looks fine on the outside, steady job, relationships, goals to chase? But inside, there's a vague sense of drifting, as if something essential has never been touched. Maybe you've taken healing workshops, read piles of self-help books, practiced meditation or journaling, even tried therapy. And yet just one frown from someone, an unanswered message, or a gentle rejection can make you shrink, feel small, and hurt in a way that seems irrational. But the truth is, it's not irrational. And you are not weak. You're simply touching something very deep and very real inside you. That part Carl Jung called the child archetype. In his analytical psychology, it's not just about childhood memories. It's a living psychological structure, a universal energy present within each of us. Jung once wrote, "The child is a symbol of the soul. It is not just what you were, it is what you can become." To understand this, imagine yourself at age 3 or 4. You hadn't learned to hold back your tears to look strong. You hadn't mastered smiling while sad or staying silent so as not to bother the grown-ups. When you were sad, you cried. When you were excited, you jumped with joy. You lived with raw authenticity, unguarded, unafraid of being judged. That was pure life, and it is the most original version of you. But very early on, that child began to be conditioned. Maybe you heard things like, "Stop crying," "No one likes a whiny kid," or "Boys don't act weak," or "If you want to be loved, you have to behave. Get good grades, be polite." These messages became the scripts inside you. From a carefree child, you learned to hide emotions, suppress desires, and people please to earn approval. And so you grew up, but the wounded child never really did. Here's what matters. Your inner child isn't just a memory. It's alive. It exists now in your emotional reactions, in the way you love, in the fear of being abandoned, in the feeling of not being enough when you're rejected. When someone calls you too much or needy, you might be 35 or 40 years old. But the part of you that feels deeply wounded is a 5-year-old who was once left behind, wrongly blamed or never heard. Jung believed the child archetype appears in all cultures, from ancient myths to modern films, as a symbol of new beginnings, of lost innocence, and of the potential to be reborn. In dreams, the inner child often shows up as an abandoned kid, a lost baby, or a small figure who holds the key to a great mission like Hercules, Moses, or Harry Potter. Why a child? Because the child is the image of both vulnerability and potential. It carries our oldest wounds and also our untouched creative power. You don't need to have experienced abuse or trauma to have a wounded inner child. It could be as subtle as a parent not reacting when you proudly showed your drawing, a cold comment when you cried, the absence of hugs, the lack of someone asking, "How do you feel?" All these can leave deep marks in a child learning to survive in a world where emotions aren't seen as important. From there, we start forming our internal I must rules. I must achieve to be loved. I must behave to not be abandoned. I must help others to feel worthy. These become silent programs running in the background, shaping all we do without us realizing. We grow up, but we don't truly become whole. So why is healing the inner child so important? Because most of our overreactions, the anxiety when someone doesn't text back, the loneliness, when we feel ignored, the fear when we're criticized, don't come from the present. They come from that child who was never truly comforted. It's that child, not the 35-year-old CEO who is reacting, who is still waiting to be protected. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." We cannot truly heal if we refuse to touch what once hurt us. But here's the miracle: when you dare to look at that child, listen to them, and hold them, you don't just heal, you awaken treasure. That child doesn't only carry pain. It holds everything you once had but lost: wonder, imagination, joy, the ability to love freely, the fascination with beauty, the deep trust in life. Do you remember the thrill of bringing your favorite toy to school? The joy of drawing all afternoon with no need for praise? That was the free child, untouched by expectations, unbroken by comparison or criticism. Healing your inner child isn't just digging up the past to grieve. It's a homecoming to the truest part of yourself, a place where you don't need to try so hard to be loved, where you can live without performing, where you can just be whole, worthy, lovable, just as you are. That is the beginning of individuation, the journey Carl Jung emphasized again and again, the path from the conditioned self, the ego chasing approval, back to the self, your authentic, undivided being. So ask yourself, when did I abandon the child inside me? And today, what can I do to come back and hold them again? There's a strange paradox many adults face often after a heartbreak, an emotional breakdown or painful cycles in relationships. It's the feeling of being trapped inside yourself. You know exactly what's happening, and yet you can't stop yourself from reacting too much. Despite your experience, logic, and self-awareness, you keep falling into the same patterns, choosing the wrong people, silencing your needs, or self-sabotaging your chances at happiness. Carl Jung called this the dominance of the unconscious. It's when the shadowy parts of your soul, repressed and forgotten during your development, begin to speak. And if you don't recognize them, you'll keep living your life like a puppet controlled by invisible wounds. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This means the parts of you that remain unlit, your limiting beliefs, repressed emotions, and unresolved memories, become the most powerful forces shaping your life. They'll return as breakdowns, as the wrong people, or as inexplicable mistakes. Invisible wounds become haunting whispers. Think back, when you were 5 years old, were you held when you cried? Did someone gently ask why you were sad? Or were you told to stop crying because crying is bad? When you were angry, did someone sit with you to name that emotion? Or were you scolded for being stubborn or rude? Psychological wounds don't always come from big traumatic events. Sometimes they come from absence. No one to listen, no comforting hug, no validation for your feelings. They come from words that seemed harmless but shaped your identity. Boys don't cry. Be good and mommy will love you. Be strong. No one likes weak people. So the child learns, my feelings don't matter. I'm only lovable if I'm obedient. I must please others to be loved. These beliefs don't stay in childhood. They become core beliefs that quietly shape everything. You fear abandonment, so you overgive to keep people around even if they don't deserve you. You fear rejection, so you hide your true desires. You fear being a burden, so you smile through pain, staying silent when you most need help. These are the survival strategies of a child who once had to silence their soul just to feel safe. The body remembers what the mind denies. Jung said, what is rejected in the mind appears as fate from the outside. This means the feelings you tried to forget, shame, fear, humiliation, the ache of not being loved, don't vanish. They just transform into strong emotional reactions that seem irrational now. We call these triggers powerful emotional responses to small things. A cold glance makes you feel invisible and worthless. A gentle no makes your whole world collapse. A minor mistake at work makes you feel like a total failure. You know it's not a big deal, yet you can't stop the reaction. Because it's not the adult you responding, it's the 5-year-old you who once got yelled at for crying or ignored when they needed comfort. The shadow isn't evil, it's a forgotten child. In Jung's theory, the shadow isn't just where your darkness lives. It's where all the parts of you that were denied or shamed reside: your sensitivity, your anger, your need for unconditional love, your fear of being left behind. Jung wrote, in the shadow, we do not only find evil there, we also find the truest part of ourselves that never had a chance to live. Were you taught that crying is weak? Then when you cry now, you're not weak, you're brave. Brave enough to feel, brave enough to break a rule that imprisoned you for years. Healing begins with acknowledging that inner child. Every time you get triggered, pause. Ask yourself, is this emotion really from today or from an old memory? Who's reacting right now? Is it me or the child in me who's never been heard? Imagine walking into a dark room where a child is curled up in a corner. She's trembling, eyes red, hugging scratched knees. No one ever listened to her cries. No one asked where it hurt. No one came to hold her. Until you, the adult you are today, walk in and say, you're not alone anymore. I see you, and I won't leave you. That's not just a visualization. That is the beginning of healing, when you embrace the feelings you once rejected, when you stop being ashamed of your pain, when you dare to say to that child, you are allowed to cry. You are allowed to be angry. You are worthy of love even in your imperfection. And that is the beginning of individuation, the journey back to your self whole and true. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't have to be better to deserve love. What you truly need is to accept that the child in you is still there, still waiting for you to come home. And when you do, when you welcome your shadow instead of fighting it, darkness is no longer your enemy. It becomes your guide. Have you ever thought of yourself as the strong one, the independent one, or the one who always takes care of others? Maybe you see yourself as someone who's emotionally composed, who always puts others at ease, who gives 110% in everything. But have you ever stopped to ask, where did these traits come from? Are they truly who you are, or just armor you learned to wear to survive? Carl Jung called this armor the persona, the social mask each of us develops to adapt, to be accepted, to avoid getting hurt. It's the version of you the world sees, but not necessarily the deepest truth of who you are. The strong one may have once been a child no one protected. Are you the one who always holds things together? The emotional anchor for others? Do you care for everyone else's feelings while ignoring your own? Are you calm and resilient even in crisis? Maybe you were a child who had to grow up too fast. No one hugged you when you were scared. No one asked if you were tired. No one ever gave you permission to fall apart. So you became strong not because you wanted to, but because you had to. It was the only way to survive in an emotionally unsafe environment. You became someone who needs nothing because you learned that needing makes you weak and weakness makes you unlovable. And now you carry the mask of "I'm fine" while inside a child is still longing to be held. The cheerful peacemaker may have once been a child living in fear. Do you avoid conflict? Do you smile even when you're hurting inside? Are you always the one keeping the peace, smoothing things over? Maybe you grew up in a household where emotions were dangerous. Maybe the atmosphere was chaotic, full of yelling, tension, unpredictability. You never knew when things would explode. So you learned a survival strategy: keep everyone happy to stay safe. You became the sweet one, the polite one, the easy one. But deep down, you stopped being you. You lost touch with your real needs. You feared that being honest would get you rejected or abandoned. And so to survive, you made yourself invisible. The independent achiever may have once been a child left alone in their vulnerability. You're self-sufficient. You handle things on your own. You're successful and capable, but you rarely share your struggles. It's hard for you to say, I need help. You're the one others rely on, but who holds you? It's possible that when you were young, you needed someone and no one came. So you learned to not need, not because you're invincible, but because you couldn't bear the pain of needing and being let down. You became your own hero. You believed only I can help myself. You work hard, succeed, excel, but beneath it all is the quiet hope. If I'm good enough, I'll finally be worthy of love. Jung's warning: personality isn't always who you are. It might be who you had to become. Often what we call personality is really a survival strategy. Jung said every part of your personality you view as strength may also be an unhealed survival response. You might say you're independent, but maybe that's because you were never allowed to depend on anyone. You say you're strong, but maybe you were never given permission to be weak. You say you're always positive, but maybe you had to pretend to be okay just to avoid punishment or abandonment. This isn't about blame, it's an invitation to understand. This is not about blaming your parents. It's not about digging up the past just to dwell on pain. The truth is, your parents likely carried their own wounded children inside. They survived by wearing their own armor too. This is an invitation to look at yourself not with judgment, but with compassion. Not to erase your personality, but to understand it. To gently peel back the layers of defense you no longer need. Every irrational reaction, every emotional pattern you want to control, every time you feel too sensitive, too needy, or too exhausted, it may not be your adult self at all. It may be the inner child in you, still waiting to be loved the right way. So how do we begin coming home to ourselves? Carl Jung called this journey individuation, the path of separating your conditioned identity from your true self. And it doesn't start with fixing or improving yourself. It starts with honesty. Write these questions down. Give yourself a safe space to explore. What do people usually call me? What did I learn about love growing up? Am I comfortable being vulnerable? Can I cry in front of others without shame? Am I afraid of being truly seen? You don't have to answer all at once. But every time you dare to look inside, you move one step closer to yourself. And when you realize that your armor once protected you, you'll feel gratitude before letting it go. If any part of this resonates with you, drop a comment below. What kind of armor have you worn? Who did you think you were? And what are you starting to discover now? I'll read every word, because I believe that every time we're brave enough to speak our truth, a piece of our soul comes home. And if you're on this journey, don't walk it alone. Subscribe to the channel to go deeper into shadow work, inner child healing, and the journey back to the self with Carl Jung. There is a quiet pain that many people carry throughout their lives, an emptiness without a clear reason, a silent, persistent void. Even if you've found success, have a stable relationship, and are surrounded by people who love you, there's still a subtle sense of confusion within, like a part of you has never been truly touched. Maybe you've thought, I have everything. Why do I still feel lonely? Or I've tried so hard, why do I still feel like I'm not enough? These aren't questions about material lack. They're the voice of your inner child, the one who was once left behind, unheard and unprotected. Carl Jung once wrote, "We are not healed by forgetting the past, but by making peace with it." And one of the deepest ways to make peace with the past isn't by forgetting or blaming. It's through reparenting, becoming the parent you needed for yourself. Not through logic, but through small, steady, and gentle acts, like a whisper sent backward through time. This time, you won't have to grow up alone. What is reparenting? Reparenting doesn't mean you have to instantly forgive those who hurt you, nor does it mean staying stuck in memories or seeing yourself as a victim. Reparenting is the journey of choosing to step into the role of a spiritual mother or father for the forgotten child inside you. This is your inner child still alive in every emotional trigger, every fear, every moment when you feel not enough. It looks like telling yourself, I see you. You're allowed to feel this way. Choosing to rest, not because you've done enough, but because everyone deserves gentleness. No longer forcing yourself to be strong all the time, but allowing yourself to tremble, to be soft, to need someone. Reparenting isn't about trying hard to heal. It's about small acts of daily love, unshowy, but profoundly deep. Talking to your inner child. No perfect method, just honesty. You don't need fancy techniques or expensive workshops to begin. Just one sincere moment when you pause and ask yourself, are you feeling sad today? Do you still miss someone who didn't believe you? Do you need a hug or just someone to listen? Start by writing a letter to yourself at age 6. Place your hand on your heart. Close your eyes. Imagine the face of the child you once were. You'll see that child doesn't need perfection. They just need someone who will stay, who won't walk away when it hurts. At first, it may feel awkward, even silly. But in those very moments, you're doing something your mind never allowed before listening to what was once silenced. Jung said the child is the potential of the future. When you reconnect with the child within you, don't just heal, you unlock life that had once been frozen. Daily behavior. How you actually reparent yourself. Reparenting doesn't require a tearful healing session. It begins with very small, consistent, and kind choices. When you're tired, instead of pushing through, you gently say, I need to rest, and that's okay. When you're rejected, instead of thinking I'm not good enough, you say I'm sad and I still deserve love. When you accomplish even something small, you celebrate yourself because the child I once was never got praised, never felt truly seen. These acts, seemingly minor, are actually the language of love your inner child has been waiting to hear for years. The body is the gateway to healing, Your inner child doesn't live in your mind. It doesn't understand words like healing inner work or trauma. It lives in your body in the tense shoulders, the tremors of fear, the invisible aches you can't explain. Begin listening to your body with small rituals. Place your hand on your chest when your heart aches. Hug yourself gently when the tears fall. Create small rituals. Sip tea in silence, journal each morning. Walk without earbuds. You don't have to rescue the child. You just have to stay with gentleness, consistency, and sincerity. Something perhaps no one ever did for you before. Gradually, you'll feel something new kindness from within. And that is the turning point. When you begin to give yourself the love you once searched for in others, you stop waiting for someone to fix you. You stop trying to prove your worth because you've started to see it from the inside. Carl Jung once wrote, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Darkness isn't the enemy. It's where your child self still sits. Not angry, not blaming, just waiting for you to return to come close and light a candle. Are you practicing reparenting? If so, what's one small thing you've done to be gentler with yourself? There is an image that carries timeless, symbolic power found in every culture, every religion, every myth, and even in our deepest dreams, the divine child. This child is not merely a cute infant. It is the symbol of spiritual rebirth, of a new beginning, not born in comfort, but emerging from breakdown darkness and profound loneliness. Carl Jung once wrote, "The child is a symbol of the greatest potential transformation in the human soul." We often search for light outside of ourselves, through success, through love, through recognition from others. But perhaps the real light lies hidden deep within, right where we were once most wounded. And the divine child is the symbol of that deepest part of you, the part that never disappeared, just waited to be seen. The divine child. You don't need to create it, just clear the path for its return. One of the greatest illusions in healing is this idea that you must become a better version of yourself. But the truth is, you don't need to become anyone else. You don't need to heal perfectly or shine the right way or mold yourself into the image of a spiritually awakened person. What you need to do is simpler but more radical. Clear the path home. Remove layers of shame, fear, and denial so the original light within you can shine again. The divine child was once you when you dared to dream big, laughed loudly without fear of judgment, loved wholeheartedly without calculation, believed you deserved good things simply because you existed. It isn't weak, it isn't naive. It's the source of light you forgot. And the miracle is it doesn't come from the outside. It has been waiting inside you all along. The wound is symbol, the place where your energy was blocked. Jung emphasized that psychological wounds aren't just old memories. They are living symbols, blockages where your inner energy couldn't flow. Each wound is a locked door, and here's the paradox: the very place that hurt the most is often where your deepest transformation can begin. For example, if you were rejected when you expressed emotion, you may have become quiet, not because you lack feeling, but because your emotional flow was once shut down. If you were abandoned, you may have become controlling, not because you want to dominate others, but because your inner love energy had nowhere safe to go. Now imagine if these broken places could be seen embraced. They could become the gateways to your rebirth. Inner resurrection. No one may see it, but you will know. Jung called this psychic rebirth. It doesn't happen in dramatic moments. It doesn't need witnesses. There are no rituals, no fireworks. It might begin with something quiet. One day you stop judging yourself for being soft. One day you say no to what no longer serves you without guilt. One day you laugh for no reason without needing permission, without needing to earn joy. And in that moment, the divine child within opens its eyes. Not to replace you, but to walk beside you, making you whole again. How to invite the divine child to return. You can't force it to appear, but you can invite it with sincerity. Here are 3 practical ways to open the door. Write down what you used to love as a child. Drawing, dancing, jumping in puddles, building sandcastles, daydreaming for hours. These were never just games. They were the language of your soul before you were told to grow up, to be serious, to be useful. Create space for joy without purpose. Don't do everything to achieve something. Just let yourself play, not for approval, not for outcomes. You'll notice a part of you smiles, sighs with relief because finally it gets to live again. Tune in to where in your body you feel warm, radiant. Maybe it's your chest when you do something kind. Maybe it's your hands when you hold someone. Maybe it's your belly when you laugh freely. That's where the child is knocking. When you live from that light, you don't just heal, you radiate. Jung believed that true healing is never just personal. Because when you begin to live from the light of your soul, something magical happens. You inspire others to be more real. You become a safe space for others to express their shadows. You no longer have to try to make others comfortable. Your presence becomes healing in itself. You become a living symbol, not because you're perfect, but because you've embraced both your light and your darkness as sacred parts of one whole soul, and you dare to live with both. Have you ever met the divine child within you? If you've ever had a moment, no matter how small, where you felt truly yourself, no effort, no pretending, no armor, that may have been a sign the child is returning. You may have spent your whole life believing you had to be better, to be strong, to be kind, to never let anyone down, to keep smiling even when you were breaking inside. You may have pushed yourself to fit the image others expected within your family and society and love. But then one day you stopped. You didn't want to keep running anymore. You felt exhausted from having to be okay all the time. And you started to realize what you truly needed wasn't to fix yourself, but to be seen, fully, completely, light and shadow both. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Enlightenment doesn't come from avoiding the ugly or unworthy parts of you. It comes when you dare to face them, not to punish, but to understand. It's right there in the parts you were ashamed of, the parts you tried to hide, the parts you thought had to change to be loved, that you find the deepest door to freedom. That freedom doesn't come from being healed enough or better. True freedom doesn't wait for you to become your best version. It begins when you stop judging your past and start speaking to it with compassion. When you place your hand on your wounds and instead of blaming, you say, "All of this makes sense, and I'm here to listen." In that moment, you are no longer a victim of your childhood or circumstances. You become the conscious witness, a mature soul, rewriting the story of your own life. You are the one writing the ending now. Not by erasing the past, but by adding new chapters. Chapters of acceptance, of connection, of unconditional love given to yourself. Chapters that include the gentleness you once longed for, now offered by your own hands. Boundaries not from anger, but from knowing your worth. Moments of laughter, tears, and living without needing anyone's permission. You become the mother, the father, the spiritual friend your inner child always needed. And from that place, life begins to bloom, not as a duty, but as a song you are finally free to sing in your own voice. Every time you choose gentleness over judgment, you come home to yourself. This journey doesn't require perfection. It doesn't say you must be okay to be worthy. It only whispers, you are loved even unhealed. You are worthy even in pieces. You don't need to wait for someone else to see you. You only need to begin right now by telling yourself, "I'm here, I'm listening, and I'm not leaving anymore." If there's one truth to carry with you after this video, let it be this: you are not alone on this journey back to yourself. Your wounds don't make you weaker, they are doorways to deeper connection with your soul. Your inner child doesn't need to be fixed, only embraced with truth, with non-judgmental eyes, with unconditional love. And if anything in this video touched you, leave a comment below. It doesn't have to be eloquent. It doesn't have to be long. Just be real. Because maybe your story is the light someone else needs to find their way home. If you felt seen or held through this video, don't forget to hit subscribe to join me on more journeys into the psyche, the soul healing, and the path back to the true self. Each week, we'll go deeper together, not to be more successful, but to be more real. In each of us, there is another whom we do not know. Jung and I believe that part of you is smiling, waiting within. Thank you for staying with me until the end. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to return. Welcome home.